Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time this podcast finds you, welcome to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing. Great guest today, Jeff Nischwitz. Jeff brings it with culture, team engagement, biz dev, works with lawyers, and we'll get into that in just 2 seconds. And Jeff and I were just talking about YouTube channels. So this is primarily a podcast, primarily audio, but we're recording all of them on video now. So if you're one of those folks who's watching this on YouTube, do us a favor, click subscribe, because it helps, obviously, when we're trying to get great guests to say, oh, our video's been viewed 85,000 times, but we also have a couple thousand subscribers. So do us a favor, click the subscribe button. Anyways, without further blah, blah, blah from me, Jeff, welcome to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast.
That's a mouthful, Jay. I'm excited to be here. I'll try and make sure that none of my answers have that long of a name in them.
I know. I mean, to be honest, about 15 years ago, I started the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing podcast. But now that we only work with law firms and interview experts like yourselves who deal with law firms, we added the law firms.
There you go.
So it's hard to get it out. So tell us a little bit about you and your journey.
Okay, yeah, cool. I'll do the relatively short version. For some reason, people really find my journey fascinating. And I think it's a lesson that when we live our own life, we don't really see it as fascinating. So it's an interesting journey. I started a traditional law firm, a lawyer career. My first job, went to law school, clear as a bell. I'm going to be a lawyer, going to become a partner, had a clear path, went out and did that, joined a large firm, became a partner, and then said, now what? I was 33 years old and had achieved my life's goal. Said, okay, you better do some new goals. But so the first thing I realized was that I'm a troublemaker. And I was told at the law firm that I asked too many questions and I shook too many trees. And I said, well, I guess I'm not going to have a leadership role here. So I have to create my own table, so to speak. I'm not going to be invited to that table. I'll start my own. So I started my own firm, had my own firm for 7 years, and then actually realized that I hated practicing. I realized that what I really liked was the business side. And I frankly couldn't figure out how to stay in the law firm without practicing. And so I left and I went out and did, over a period of 6 to 8 years, I did a number of business development roles. So I really got good at building relationships and moving the needle on opportunities and storytelling. And then after that, and I won't go into the longer story, but I pretty literally stumbled into coaching and speaking and consulting, which includes law firms and other businesses. And that all came about because I wrote a book on how to run law firms like a business called Think Again, Innovative Approaches to the Business of Law, that someone read, at least one, and said, I think this is awesome. Can you help us in our firm? And next thing you know, I'm a coach, speaker, consultant. And over the years, the last almost 20 years, probably 25% of my clients have been law firms, or lawyers in law firms, and then a wide range of other businesses. But most of those are also professional services, which is relevant because a lot of those industries are so similar. So that's kind of probably the 2-minute version, maybe a little less, of a much more winding path.
Most of the readers will appreciate that, but if any of your family's listening, they'll be like, Jeff, why'd you cut it so short? So
Yeah, why don't you tell them that story?
what year did you write the book?
The book came out in 2007. It was published by the American Bar Association.
That's awesome. So you said 20 years. So my book's actually just celebrated its 20th anniversary. The 10 Golden Rules of Online Marketing came
Oh,
out in
wow.
2003, 2004.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, I should celebrate book anniversaries.
Yeah, get ready. And now you've got time. To be honest, we were a little late with the celebration. We celebrated in April of this year with a nice party and everything.
Nice.
But that's great. So next question is like, what is your why? What gets you up in the morning? What makes your heart beat faster?
Probably the best way to say that, I mean, I have my hands in a lot of things these days. I mean, I'm still actively working and all those things. But the biggest thing is, I think the way to simplify what I talk to people about is people have been doing business, interacting with each other, leading, all the things related to business in the same way for decades. And it doesn't need to be that way. The world has evolved and many of us have not. So what gets me out of bed is the idea of potential, having the opportunity every day to ask somebody a question, share a perspective that will cause them to think differently. That's really, someone recently asked me to do like a 10-second elevator pitch. And I said, they said, like, what's the essence of what you do? And I said, well, I ask people questions they've never been asked before so they can know something they've never known, see something they've never seen, and do something different they've never thought of. That's exciting to me. I mean, if the world, think about how the world would be better if everybody just did 10% more of that every day.
So look, let's try it out. Ask me one of your great questions.
Uh, See, now that's you're getting tricky here. I will do it, but here's why. Most of my questions aren't scripted. They're in the moment, but here's one of my favorites, and it's a fundamental shift. We all know, even though we don't want to admit it, that one of the biggest obstacles in anything we're working on in our lives, personally or professionally, is fear. But typically, we don't want to acknowledge fear because we want to pretend that we're fearless. And that always makes me laugh when someone says they're fearless. I think, oh, so you're not human because fear is very natural. So here's the flip. I call it a flip. I used to ask myself when I was facing a challenge, I would say, Jeff, are you afraid of something? And the answer typically was no. Because if we ask ourselves that question, we want to say no, and we do say no. So now the question I ask myself is, I just assume I'm afraid. So I say, Jeff, what are you afraid of? And I don't trust the first answer because my first answer is usually an exaggerated version of the risk designed me to keep from moving forward. So I'll keep going. I'll sort of do the so what, and I'll do that with clients too. What are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid I'll lose my house. What are you really afraid of? Actually, I'm afraid that it'll be harder than I thought. I'm afraid I'll disappoint people close to me. And we start finding out that the fear is really different. And the more clear we are in the fear, the more conscious we can make a decision of the ways we're going to proceed. So that would be an example of just flipping a question to a different direction, more designed to use to kind of get away from the safety mechanism in our mind.
I love it. There's a story I tell, and it's podcast related. We're on our podcast. My buddy JB Glossinger's got a great podcast. It's always in the top 5 or 10 for personal development. It's called Morning Coach. And I remember it was January 1st or 2nd, whatever that first Monday is of the new year of 2009. And if you think back to Jan 1, 2009, we were all in fear, right? We
Oh
did we
yeah, I remember that time well.
Yeah, we knew we were in a recession. It was the great housing collapse. We didn't know if we were facing a depression and how bad and how deep it would get. And I was living in fear. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my business? We lost a couple of real estate clients already. Back then we did everybody. Now we only work with lawyers. And I went out for a walk my dog. I remember it, visually and quite, literally, right? And I was listening to JB and he's like, hey, good morning. That's how he starts every podcast. And he's like, this is going to be a great year and a great opportunity for everybody. I'm thinking, what? JB, have you lost it? He said, yeah, in the Great Depression, there was great fortunes made and some of the greatest, businesses were started in the Depression, and there's different needs and there's different opportunities. And a lot of your competitors are going to be, going out of business, and there's tremendous opportunity. So kickstart the year. And I was like, okay, great. I get it. I got to just change my mindset. And that got me out of that fear that was like, really like, I hadn't slept for a couple nights, like, and it just kickstarted me. So I think of that often when, an employee resigns and I'm like, oh no, how are we ever going to replace this person? But experience also, I think, helps you a lot, that no one's irreplaceable, and sometimes you find someone even better.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that time frame because that exact time frame is one of the most threshold moments in my life, which was in March of 2009. Because as I said, I had written this book, Think Again, about law firm businesses, but I still had a job. And I wrote the book because I wanted to write a book. I didn't have my consultancy yet. And I was cruising along in my job looking for an opportunity to go into this coaching business, but I didn't want to jump off the cliff. And in February of 2009, the company I worked with, out of the blue to me, brought me in the office. I thought it was a regular meeting, and I realized when they walked in, they were letting me go. And so I got laid off in February of '09. And my conclusion was, I guess now's the time I'm going to go forward with this business that I was already thinking about. And about 6 weeks later, I had attended a networking event for job seekers because I had spoken to their group. I wasn't in the group, I spoke to them. And the guy that runs the group walks up to me that night in the bar and said, how you doing, Jeff? I said, I'm doing great. And he said, wow, we don't hear much of that these days. And I said, no, we don't, man. This place is depressing. All anybody's talking about is how there's no jobs, there's no opportunities. And he said, well, Jeff, to be fair, you have a job. And I said, his name's Bob. I said, Bob, actually, I don't have a job. He said, what? I said, yeah, I got laid off 6 weeks ago. He said, what are you doing? I said, I started a business. He said, are you insane? This is the worst economic time in the history of the United States since the Great Depression. And I said, yeah, I think there's opportunities. And he said, well, uh, he said, did you take some clients? I said, no, I have no clients. And he said, what? And I said, I not only don't have any clients yet, I said, do you know what a pipeline is? He said, yeah. And I said, I've got a pipeline drawn on my wall, but I don't even have anybody in it yet. And he said, well, you must be in a great financial situation. I said, actually, no, I'm in the worst financial situation of my life because I'm in the middle of getting a divorce. I'm paying for two houses. This is the worst possible time to do this. And he looked at me and he said, Jeff, how in the world are you great? And I said, Bob, I woke up this morning and decided I was great because I don't let the world tell me how I am. And most of the people in this room are letting the world tell them how they are. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that moment in time changed everything because I realized not only was it serving me to have that different perspective, but how so many people were not. And that was when I came up with the first time I started using this phrase where I've heard it a lot the last 25 years. People will say something about, Jeff, you're crazy. And my answer now is always the same. Thank you. I appreciate that compliment. How is normal working for you?
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. So we got your why. We got a little distracted, but I think hopefully that message will resonate with two or three people if they're living in fear or apprehension. Um, my goodness, there's a greatness on the other side of fear and apprehension. And crazy.
Hmm.
Um, the next question I think we answered, and that's, are there any key pivots or changes you made in your career or your business, and the lessons that a young attorney could apply to their life? Maybe,
Yeah, well, that was one of them.
yeah,
I think a couple others. I mean, I've had some big pivots. That was a big one. Certainly when I quit practicing law, that was a huge pivot. And someone might say, well, how is that supposed to apply to someone who's, practicing? I said, well, the fact that it didn't fit me doesn't mean it doesn't fit someone else. But I think we have the opportunity to reframe our experience. We have an opportunity based upon how we choose to look at our situation, how we choose to look at our opportunities. And I would say, one of the big lessons I learned early on is just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I'm supposed to do it. And a lot of people end up spending all their time doing things that they're not really, it's not fulfilling. because they're good at it, because they assume that if they're good at it, it must be fulfilling. And it's not, that's not true. That is really not true. The other thing I would say is, and this is really especially true for lawyers, because I've been around the profession now for, God, 40 years, 40 years now. And it is really easy for lawyers, some others, but lawyers are at the top of the list, to get trapped in that their identity is what they do. And that's really, doesn't have to be true for anyone because I don't believe it's actually healthy. I think you can be at the top of your game without having your identity defined by what you do. Just be at the top of your game. Because if you define yourself, if your identity is defined by what you do, it can be really a trapped experience. And, as you know, Jay, being around this profession, the legal profession is not known for quality of life for the people practicing it.
Right.
Lawyers are at the top of all the lists you don't want to be at the top of in terms of mental health and, substance abuse and all these things. So it's a challenging profession that I think is important early in your career to learn to look at what you do and your role in it differently so you don't get stuck and tripped up by some of these realities of the so-called realities of the profession. They're not realities. They're just how we choose to do it.
How do you how do you prevent that? Like, when you're into that substance abuse, mental health circle, um, how do you what should a lawyer do? What should anyone do?
Well, first of all, one of the biggest challenges is the legal profession is historically been one, and I should say, not say historically, in the last, call it 70 years, because before that, the profession was, I think, different. But in the last 70 years, the legal profession became one that was largely defined by people's effort, not their ability. And there's a difference. So it became a profession where people became successful by just working longer hours, not working better, not working differently, but by working hard. And I still believe that does not need to be the case in the practice. The people that annoy us in the profession, if you're a lawyer, are the ones that are not working as hard as you and seemingly more successful because they're doing it differently. So number one is don't don't assume that the way to success is just to work hard because there's no end to it. Secondly, learn to prioritize yourself and the people that you care about. Um, I would say the biggest trap that I fell into, and it's not limited to lawyers, I would call it the entrepreneurial trap, especially when you have your own business, you or you're entrepreneurial in it because you're a partner at some level. You start making sacrifices and you tell yourself that you're doing it for your family. And there is some truth in it, but it's not all true. And you end up missing out on a lot and sometimes losing relationships, losing families through whatever it is, whether it's a divorce or not having time with your kids. And you tell yourself, yeah, but I was doing it for them. That's one of the biggest lies because the reality is most of us, what's really driving us is our personal desire for success and to be recognized. And while money sometimes follows that, that benefits our family, do not fall into that trap. So I think one of the things we need to constantly do always is challenge our assumptions about our own why and about what it takes to achieve our desired outcome. And most important, get really clear what that outcome should be. Because if you only pick a business outcome, you're going to leave people in the wake. And I did it. I did it. There's a lot of things I would have done differently, but no, learn, what is it? Know better, do better. And I've applied that now for 40 years.
Love it, love it. Um, so tell me about your current role in the current company and how you help folks and who's a great referral for you.
Well, yeah, I love working with lawyers and law firms. which are typically, when I'm working with them, I'm doing things like um, helping with business development, relationship building, but a lot of times it's internal in terms of culture and how and leadership. The reality is most lawyers did not get into the business of law because they love business. And they end up running the business and may not have all the tools developed that would really help them, especially the people tools. I think that one of the things I think is important, and that's why my book Think Again, the subtitle was Innovative Approaches to the Business of Law, to constantly remind lawyers that it is a business, and the best approach is to treat it like a business where the product is law. The product are these legal solutions. The product is, in fact, the product is the outcomes we provide for our clients, whether it be advice or specific outcomes. But think of it, really start to understand the business. So where I thrive and add the most value is when people are saying, what, we want to build a better business. We know how to be great lawyers, but we would like some help in figuring out how to do the business better, including having a better experience for our people. And part of that is a better experience for our clients, because the other reality is that our clients judge us as much, if not more, for the experience they have as for the outcome they get. They want a good outcome, but the outcome is often variable. And if we're only going to have happy clients when they have the great outcome, well, there's a good amount of time they're not going to be happy. But if we can give them a great experience, we have a better chance of building that relationship. And the key to that is now we get those word of mouth referrals. Because what you want is a bunch of raving fans, and raving fans as clients are the ones that are going to really accelerate your business.
How do you boost it? If you do a great job for clients, are there techniques to get more referrals?
Yeah, stay in touch with them. That's the biggest thing I see, especially in the personal injury law firms. Because we too often look at our clients in that specific practice area. We look at our clients as a single event. We're working on their matter, and the odds are they're not going to have another matter. Now, business focused law firms are different. They have legacy clients. They get a client and they may do work for them for 50 years. So it's not really saying they're going to come back, but who are they going to tell? And here's the thing. People who have a good experience with you, if they have a bad experience, they're going to tell five people. If they have a good experience, they're going to tell one. If they have a great experience, they're going to tell 20. Because what you want to do is you want to stay top of mind. And the big thing is we believe, let's say it's me, let's say you're the lawyer, Jay, and I work with you and I have a great experience, but I don't hear from you for 10 years. I forget about you pretty quickly. And the more you can just stay in touch with me, whatever it is, whether it's that card or that note or that email, so that as I'm walking around and I hear someone mention something that relates to you, I'm like, oh, you need to talk to Jay. And what you want to say, you want them to have say something like this: oh my God, you need to talk to Jay. Not, well, yeah, I know this guy. Yeah, he helped me. Now that's not enough, because that doesn't sell anything. You want people running around screaming your name, and you need to stay top of mind to them. And that can be systematized. And I know a lot of what you do
Yeah.
is about helping law firms systematize their process. And that's the secret sauce, is systemization.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a regular podcast listener, I apologize if you've heard this story before, but I was in a car accident about 10 years ago. And then I was in a car accident about 6 years after that, about 4 years ago. So 10 years ago, we worked with few lawyers, but not like we do now. And I went to the chiropractor and I said, my back's really stiff, but I was in a car accident. And the chiropractor's eyes lit up. They're like, car accident? Because they knew they were going to introduce me to this attorney. And they started giving me free things. Like I think even this, I still have a pillow here beside my desk that came from that time.
Oh, wow.
They're like, here's, you get a back pad and these creams and potions. And they introduced me to the attorney who it turns out I had an ongoing issue. We got rear-ended, we got whacked pretty good. I was with a couple of my employees. And then 6 years later, I was in another rear end. I was actually going to see a client in Orlando, and I couldn't remember the name of the guy from 6 years before. So to reinforce what you said, got to have a newsletter, very basic table stakes. Got to have some social media. Got to have the birthday card, the Christmas Hanukkah card. Ken, we talked about Ken Hardison. Actually, I was just re-listening to the Rainmaker's Playbook, a webinar we did with Ken and Steve Noodleberg and Al Margulis. If you want to really learn how to become a rainmaker, listen to Jeff's stuff and listen to that one. And Ken said, I don't know if you agree with this number. He said, in personal injury, every client should give you 4 to 5 referrals. I've heard a lot of people say it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but at the very least, Ken says he sends a Thanksgiving card, a Valentine's card, and he also has a VIP party every year. Anyone who's given 1 or more referrals invited to a big pizza party or a buffet at a Golden Corral. This is past tense because he sold his firms. Ken Hardison runs the PILMA conference now and a mastermind. And, he really makes them part of his, you said it before, part of his family, treat him like family. Like he buys them a dinner or a buffet every quarter, gives them his books, gives them his merchandise. So we've tried to replicate that a little bit with a box we send out to replicate the inner circle and ask people for reviews and ask them for referrals and Google reviews.
Well,
So
and interesting about what you said, because, I know Ken as well. Notice, because you were really specific, one of those pieces is to do things different than everybody else. Because you didn't say holiday card, you said Thanksgiving card, which I'm a big fan of because everybody, we've stopped sending a lot of cards, frankly. We used to do a lot of Christmas season cards or those holidays,
yeah,
but everybody did that, but nobody did Thanksgiving, and people weren't doing Valentine's. I talked to a firm a few years ago. They did the cards and they sent them a card on the anniversary of their matter getting resolved
nice.
because that was they're going to get that. There's no other distractions around that time, and look, you have the data. All you got to do is use it. It's not like they actually remembered the anniversary, but to the people getting it, it feels like it because it's personal. Because not everybody's getting a card that day. The people getting a card are the people that have that anniversary.
Yeah,
So
I
the
mean, I
more you
just
can
had a
personalize it, the
birthday.
better.
I got about 14 special discounts from restaurants and retailers who offered me like 5% off a pair of pants. But I think I only got 3 cards. I got a ton of cards from my immediate family here. My wife's great with that and everything. But I think I got 3 cards. I got a couple from family and one from Jason Melton. Shout out to Jason, great attorney in West Florida. And he does a great job with that ground game. Getting me a birthday card, and he actually worked on that second car accident I talked about. So credit to Jason. Um, so talk, part of your expertise is culture, team engagement. Um, Talk to me about building those pillars in a law firm.
Well, they're not particularly unique to law firms, but law firms often need them more than others because of that, what I said earlier. A lot of times, one of the downfalls of law firms is they're not thinking like businesses. They're thinking like practices that have business operations, and those are two different things. And we tend to look at our people and we don't do that. We don't do the basics. What? Let me just do my little soapbox about engagement. Most people talk about, or at least acknowledge, they would like to have more engagement from their people. And in this country, the studies for the last 30 years, they're horrible, frankly, that say that the levels of engagement in most companies is the percentage of people who are actively engaged in work are somewhere between 25 and 30% of the people. And the percentage of people who are actively disengaged, That means these are the people who have quit but stayed are about 25 to 30%. And then you've got this middle 40 to 50% that are eh. Well, we want more from our people. We want them to care, but we don't give them a reason to care. And too often we think about engagement initiatives when what we really need to do is let's get back to the basic building blocks. People in general want to, and especially at work, want to feel seen, valued, heard, and like they matter. Well, the way we do that is to personalize once again. And I will tell you a big area, I mean, I could talk about a lot, but one area to think about is feedback. People want to grow. The best people, the right people want to grow. But and a lot of times we don't have a clear path for them, number one. And number two, we don't give them encouragement to grow. And let me just share this one little twist of awareness, a piece of awareness. Look, if someone makes a mistake, we need to let them know about it. That's how they learn and get better. Absolutely agree with it. The problem is we tend to only praise people when they do big things. And my premise is that's not fair. It's not fair to tell someone every time they get something wrong, but only praise them when they get something great. So we don't praise people for getting their job done. And, the old thinking was, well, I'm not going to praise them for doing what I expected of them. Yeah, but if you don't do that, it's not fair because you are going to criticize them for every mistake they make because that's how they learn. And how they learn to grow and want to grow is by encouraging them. And it is not that hard. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just comes down to a commitment that says, I want my people to know that they matter here and I appreciate their contributions. And that is not about money because I'll close with this comment. If you look at every survey for the last 30 years where it lists all the priorities of team members, pay is assuming it's at least basic fair pay. Money is always fifth or sixth or lower on the list. And the employers say, the leaders of the firm say, well, that's not accurate because all I ever hear from my people is money. But here's the explanation. If you don't give people like opportunities to learn and grow, positive feedback, encouragement, all those other things, if you don't give them that, all they're going to talk about is money. So there's a lot of things that don't cost money that make a difference in our culture. It's time to invest in that because the people, we all know our people are critical, but we don't always act like it.
Yeah, you never really hear someone say, come by and give me a pat on the back once in a while.
Yeah,
Like they only come at the quarterly and talk about their financial
yeah.
compensation or a title or whatever. No, it's great. And thank you for reminding me. I try and remember the little things as well as the big things. And we're running on EOS now.
Yeah.
And so
Great system.
the entrepreneurial operating system and EOS says to give shout outs relative to the core values of the company. And so we're systematizing that and doing that in our team meetings. And like anything, it takes time to learn and also, like you said, remember to do it every day, not just in the monthly meeting.
Yes.
Great. Well, good news. I have some easier questions,
Oh,
shorter,
those
quick
easier.
snappers.
I thought those were easy.
So what are some apps or techniques you use for personal productivity?
Um, One that I use, I use a lot. I don't use a lot of specialty tools. I use my Outlook task, things like that. I'd use I do my daily priorities. That's a big one. I'll tell you, it's as simple, it's as old as it's 100 years old now, going back to it's from the early turn of the 20th century uh, input, which is, every day prioritize your top three things and do the first one first and don't do anything else till you get it done. It's amazingly simple, but most of us don't do it. We get distracted. We come up with a list of 30 and we just don't prioritize our list. So that's something simple. It's not an app. I do that. Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Exactly. Eat the
Eat
frog. Yeah, right on.
that frog, Brian Tracy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that to me I do use, it's a really cool creativity tool that helps me think and design strategy, whether it be big strategy or little strategy, is an application called iThoughts, and it's a mind mapping tool that I use that almost every day in some fashion. It's a great tool. It's really easy to learn, but it allows you, it's essentially on your desktop, you could use it like you would do a whiteboard kind of session where you do mind mapping if you're familiar with that. It's a really
Yep.
cool tool. And I actually use it also to take notes of sessions because then I can keep it organized. I can also do colors and colors. When we do different colors, it stimulates different parts of our mind. So I'm a big fan of that one as well.
And it's called Mind Thoughts.
I thoughts,
I
like the
Thoughts.
letter I,
Yeah,
thoughts.
great. That's a good one. And what are your best business books?
That kind of you well there are there's ones that are always great, and then I also think about what I've read recently. Probably one of my favorites of all time is Good to Great by Jim Collins. Big
Yep.
fan of that. Um, I I like leadership books. My buddy Tommy Spalding has written a couple of leader books. One of them is called The Heartful Leader. Um, I a book I think everybody should read that gets into productivity is Getting Getting Things Done. So it's called. I think
Yeah,
that's
that could
right.
be it. Yeah.
Getting Things Done by David Allen. It's 25 years old, but it is brilliant. I recommend Traction, the EOS, Gino Wickman's book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, and a new one that I just read last year that I recommend to everybody. It's called Upstream by one of the Heath. It was either Chip or Dan Heath. And Upstream is about getting away from to getting up to upstream thinking, which is instead of just dealing with the issue, let's solve the underlying problem so we don't have it again. It was a fantastic book and it really shifted my perspective.
I love that. That's great. I'll check it out. When you mention traction, I also always want to mention to people, and again, my little personal story. 8 or 9 years ago, got the book Traction at a conference, and my one of my mentors said, "Oh, Traction's the best way to run your business." And I tried to read it, and then everyone was talking about Traction, the entrepreneurial operating system, and I tried again to read it and couldn't get through it. And then they came out with another book called Get a Grip, and Get a Grip is told in a story format, in like a parable, and
Hmm.
I devoured it. And then I read Traction, and then I was like, okay, now I get it. Because in EOS they say there's two leaders in a business. There's the visionary, and I took the test. I'm a pure visionary. I love to connect with people and speak at conferences and be the face of the company. And I always go to a conference and come back with 50 ideas. And then you need your integrator who's inside the company who gets shit done,
Hmm.
gets things done. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and and so the Get a Grip is written for the visionary. So if you're like me and you've heard about traction and you've heard about the entrepreneurial operating system and you just can't get through that darn book, read Get a Grip, and I guarantee it'll give you that aha moment. And we were self-implementing with EOS, and now we're January we went full hog, and it's been fantastic for our company. So,
Wonderful.
okay, what blogs, podcasts, or YouTubes do you subscribe to? And when it hits your stream like that immediately you switch over and listen to that one.
Yeah, boy, I jump around a lot on that. I would say the things I read most consistently for probably 15 or 20 years, I'm a regular reader of Seth Godin. His book, he's purportedly he puts him out there as a marketing guy,
Yeah,
but his topics are everything. His dailies, he could be talking about some big life issue in there. So I'm a big fan of Seth Godin stuff. Um, there's I listen. I'll tell you this: listen or read anything that involves Malcolm Gladwell. Anything. Um,
agreed.
another guy, read and listen to all his stuff is Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Simon Sinek.
We talked about finding your why, and he had the not
Yeah.
number 1, 2, or 3 TED Talk on
Oh
finding
yeah, yeah,
your why.
yeah. The Golden Circle. Yeah. Those are the ones that I'm probably reading the most or listening to the most. Yeah.
Quick fun story. I spoke at a conference called eBay Live, and my book, The 10 Golden Rules, launched at that conference. And it was in the bookshop, and nobody, it wasn't available for sale anywhere else in the world. And so Seth Godin was the morning keynote, and then I was the I guess the keynote after that on the main stage. And I said, my new book's launching, and I went through the 10 golden rules of online marketing. We walked down to the bookstore, and Seth Godin was there, and I got to meet him and shake his hand and take his seat in the book signing. Another quick funny story. I sat down for the first time, and someone ran in the bookstore and bought my book and put it in front of me, and I didn't know what to sign because I'd never signed a book before. So the only inspiration I could come up with was when I was a kid, you go up to the hockey players and they'd sign their hockey number. So I just signed Jay Berkowitz number 10 because 10. I haven't come up with much more inspiration on that
Well, it's
topic.
definitely got to be short, right? I mean,
I
because
gotta
I've
ask,
written a
yeah, I
number of
gotta
books,
ask
and
Seth.
you got to have a short
Right.
snip, something snippy.
I gotta ask Seth. I should have asked him. Great. Well, who's your NFL team?
Uh, it's difficult to say this out loud. It's a tough team to root for, but I still do. I used to live in Cleveland, Ohio, so I'm a Browns fan. Still loyal, but boy, is it difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah, I moved to I live in Tampa now, and I moved to Tampa 5 years ago, and I call Cleveland the Dust Bowl of championships, or the Death
yeah,
Valley, because they've only had one championship in like 65 years, and that was the Cleveland Cavs. And I moved to Tampa Bay, and within 2 years, they had won a Super Bowl, two Stanley Cups, and lost in the World Series. And I just kept going, this doesn't happen. This isn't real. I mean, I am
got to
I'm
ride
a
with the
Lightning
local
fan. I'm a Tampa
bandwagon.
Bay Lightning fan now that I have a local team. But I guess, yeah, still a Browns fan in football.
Yeah, the Lightning are a lot of fun too. And where can people get in touch with you?
Well, the fortunate thing about my name is I'm easy to find. If you can spell my last name, which is N as in Ned, Ischwitz, you'll find everything that says Jeff Nischwitz is me,
Yeah,
which is, I mean, it's just a bonus of an unusual name. But you can find my website at nischwitzgroup.com. You can stalk me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. My all my platforms are very integrated. I have a YouTube channel as well, called Think Again Coaching, which was my prior company title. Love to have people go there and subscribe. As you were saying at the beginning, Jay, subscribers make the world go round.
yeah, please do. Well, Jeff, this was awesome. Lots of fun, inspirational for me, and hopefully for everyone who got this far. And I just want to thank you so much for your time and being a part of the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jay. This is one of my favorite things, whether it's recorded on a podcast or just sitting around having cocktails or coffee. Just sitting around having a conversation about these topics is what lights up my day. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Please send questions and comments to podcast@10goldenrules.com. That is podcast@tengoldenrules.com.